Good afternoon. I am Elaine Hall-Corbin, your host, and welcome to Artists of Color, an art and cultural show that features artists of color from around the Roxbury, Dorchester, mainly Boston's communities of color. And today's show is, I must say, is going to be about an upcoming event that will be coming up in November called Roxbury Open Studios. They will be doing their 20th anniversary. And I know because I've been around from every single one of them since they got started. And my guest for Roxbury Open Studios today is Mr. Napoleon Jones Henderson, national and international artist. Napoleon, thanks for being with me today.
Well, it was a task,
It
but
sure
I'm here.
It really was a task, wasn't
Right,
it?
absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad you're here.
Likewise, likewise.
I've known Napoleon, oh God, since I was a teenager.
Okay.
So I know a little bit about Napoleon. I know that he is an amazing artist. I've been in his studio, in his home, and seen his great work. But we're going to talk a little bit about Napoleon, find out how Napoleon got started, what prompted him to become an artist. So tell us about you.
Well, I was born in Chicago, and I came to Roxbury in 1974 to teach for 1 year, part-time, at Mass College of Art. And that was when they were in the original old location
yes.
on Brookline Avenue in Longwood, and which has now been folded, the building, the facade, folded into the hospital complex over there, and they're now located at where Boston State College used to be on Huntington, in the new and old buildings. So that's how I got here. And it happened serendipitously because there were a group of young artists who came to Chicago for the National Conference of Artists Convention. That's an organization of black artists. They were mostly educators at HBCUs and various other colleges and universities around the country, as well as high schools. And during Easter each year from 1959 till now, they would have a yearly conference, and usually on a HBCU campus, because during Easter weekend, everybody's at home mostly. Campus is available. So they came to Chicago as some of the students, because all of the faculty at the different institutions would always bring students with them, so that they could get some understanding about how a professional artist functions, what kind of things go on, the educational and conference components of presentations that were given at the conference. And they came by my studio and saw these 10-foot wide by 12-foot high looms that I was weaving on, and of course stood there looking at them rather strangely, saying, what the hell is that? I said, that's what I do. And they mentioned that there was a part-time position at Mass College of Art, and would I be interested? So I said, here's the information. They got in touch, and the rest of that is 45 years later, I'm still here.
Yes, you are.
And having raised 2 daughters and a 17-year-old, shortly to be 18-year-old granddaughter.
Oh my, are they into the arts too?
That they are,
I bet they are. I knew that.
And there are various manners, but my granddaughter more particularly. She's very adept at video and photography, and as well as a musician. She plays several instruments as well, so she's a very talented young lady.
She sure is.
And she's my apprentice and my helper when I need one.
There you go.
So that's how I got to Boston, and as a textile, we were one of the, a couple of the great aspects of coming here at that time was because this is the old textile industry. So up and down the East Coast from Providence, Rhode Island, coming on back up through New Hampshire and Massachusetts, there were all these textile mills. And there was quite a vast amount of antique yarns and things of that nature. And so I was able to visit these mills and take advantage of all these various materials that were available to me. And I figured that after a year and my complete saturation with all the wonderful seafood out here, I'd be ready to go back in a year. You know, but I've been here because it's very livable city. It's a very active art community. It used to be a
livable city.
Well, true enough. Not as livable as it used to be. But the challenge is that we have to continue to make it as livable as it used to be.
Okay.
And going forward. And so that is, again, one of the mandates, as far as I am concerned, of visual artists in particular and all creatives in general, so that we can continue to have the kind of vibrancy that you and as well as myself over these 40-some years have experienced here. And then again, it's a good place for me to get back and forth between Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Right, and I don't have to stay there. I can always come back here.
You can always come home.
I love riding the train, so I go up and down on the train and the bus. But the artist community here in Boston, Roxbury in particular, Dorchester, has been very invigorating and something that I've definitely would compare to Chicago to the extent that the mindset of the artists here very much is about the perpetuation and cultivation of the African diasporic aesthetic.
The culture is important.
That's exactly it. I mean, well,
the artistic
the visual
culture.
art is
The
culture, you know, and so that one can't separate one from the other.
True.
Because the works that one does are reflective and emblematic of the cultural life that one lives. And so if you are true to the artistic, if you will, muse, you will follow that directive, and that directive comes from your everyday life, you know. And so that's completely being fed very generously by the people who live in Roxbury and all the activity that takes place. And surely Roxbury has a very strong foundation, being the Elmer Lewis School of Fine Arts was one of the entities that I was very interested to come to from Chicago to Boston to be in the midst of, because what I read about her when she acquired the property for $1, which we thought was most advantageous and very revolutionary within the context of the Black Arts movement from the 60s, 70s, and still it continues, because the Black Arts movement is not over.
Yeah,
As
no,
long as I'm breathing, Black art is still on the move. And so coming here and being able to build upon that, and the chorale, the Mrs. Williams, her and her husband had the musical entity. It'll come to me by the time we get to the end
halfway
of this program.
to the middle. We'll be all right.
But it was a very active community, and all of the various dancing and drumming entities and the various musicians that we are deeply rooted in throughout Boston and Roxbury. And so that milieu is something that is an aspect of living that one can be in touch with on a daily basis in a city as small as Boston and Roxbury. Chicago is a massive city.
I've heard that.
You can put all of Boston in probably one of the housing projects in Chicago.
Really? Is that huge?
Okay. Chicago is a very large city.
All right.
But the closeness of the geography of being next to each other so easily is a very nourishing situation for any creative person. And I've missed Chicago in the context of having grown up there and the aspects of Chicago. I mean, being around people like Gwendolyn Brooks and Val Gray Ward, and coming up along with people like Lorraine Hansberry, who was, she wasn't a friend of mine, but she was a colleague of one of my English teachers. And so knowing her, and Hoyt Fuller, who was the editor of what was known as Black Digest, but it was changed with one of the smaller publications of Johnson Publishing Company. Along with Ebony, there was Ebony Magazine, there was Jet Magazine, and then there was Negro Digest, which became Black World under Hoyt Fuller. And so people like Gwendolyn Brooks, I mean, I was a small kid going to the Hall Branch Library just around the corner from my house, and she was the person there reading poetry to us in the afternoon until our parents came home and we went home.
Oh, wow.
You know, so things like that. And Margaret Goss Burroughs, who started the DuSable Museum of African American Art and History, and all of those kind of people, you know, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and Mahalia Jackson, you know, you name it, they were all there. That's the environment I grew up in. And so coming to Boston and finding a similar environment.
I was going to ask you, did you find?
Oh yeah, with, you know, with the various writers and poets and musicians here, being in such close proximity, it had a sort of mirror image of Chicago. And I've surely, I would say, has been instrumental in my staying here for these 45 years.
I am so glad you stayed here for this long. I really am.
Well, I'm glad to be hanging out with people
really
like you and Barbara and so forth.
And yes, I want to ask you, what do you call, you're a weave artist? Explain.
Because I'm an image maker.
That's okay. That's what I remember.
I'm an image maker, and I am one of the members of a group, Afri-Cobra. We started in Chicago in 1968, and we are now in our 51st year of a continually operating and active artist collective group. And Afri-Cobra stands for the African Commune of Bad Relevant Artists.
Bad relevant
artists.
I've gotten the bad relevant artist part.
It's about relevant, and that's bad before the Jackson 5.
You're not kidding.
You know, so that aspect of my life has been fully nourished by it was 10 of us in the beginning, and we've remained not more than 10 artists over the course of these years, because to be a member of Afri-Cobra is about another kind of commitment, which has to do with a sense of family, a sense of respect, and a sense of honor, and about projecting positive images of African people worldwide. And that is, we presently have an exhibition of the members of the original 10 artists. We were invited to exhibit in the 58th Venice Biennale in Venice, Italy, which the exhibition is presently up. It opened in May of this year, and it closes on November the 24th this year. So all of my individuals in the audience in Roxbury who have the opportunity, if they want to run over to
if we want to run over to Venice,
and take a look at
just
our
a hop,
exhibition.
skip, and a jump.
Oh, actually, it's a hop and a skip and a jump on the plane, and you're over there. But I've been there this year twice, and it's an extraordinary situation. And this year as well at the American Pavilion, Martin Puryear, who's an African-American artist, who's an extraordinary artist. He is the selected artist for the U.S. Embassy, and we are a ancillary, not ancillary, but what they call it, a collateral exhibition that was invited to be a part of the 58th Biennale, and that's been going on since I think it is 1889.
What is a Biennale?
Well, the Biennale is every 2 years there is a international exhibition of right now, presently, they have 108 countries who have a pavilion, which is a small building of sorts, or some of them are larger, that those countries exhibit artists from their country that they want to celebrate and share with the rest of the world. Okay. So this is sort of, it's seen within the art world as sort of, I use the term she-poo-poo art event that takes place on the international scope. There are biennales all over the world. You have art, Basel in Miami, you have Frankfurt, you have Basel, you have it in Brussels and in Sydney, Australia. There's a biennale, but the creme de la creme of biennales is the Venice Biennale.
The Venice, okay.
And so we are exhibiting there, and it has been a 51-year journey that has surely been an exciting journey, which I'm all the better for, and I would say the 10 of us are. And we have, over the course of these years being here, we were all concentrated in Chicago until 1970, when Jeff Donaldson left Chicago to become head of the art department at Howard University.
Oh,
and then
Howard.
Nelson Stevens left from DeKalb, Illinois, and he spent 35 years teaching at the Du Bois Institute at UMass Amherst with people such as James Baldwin, Archie Shipp, and all these people who taught up there. So these were the kind of environments we all lived in. Then, of course, I came here, and we connected with Miss Lewis and with Barry Gaither and people like Calvin Burnett and John Wilson, and of course Alan Wright, Alan Cricht,
yes,
and
Mr. Cricht.
other artists like Equa Holmes and Paul Goodnight and Milton Durr, and I could just keep naming them till the whole program
I can,
over.
hey,
you know, and
I know
so,
those names.
Those are the kind of people that have flowed through my life and enriched my life as a visual image maker. I principally graduated from the Art Institute in Chicago as a major in textile weaving.
Okay.
But while there, I studied glass blowing, which I do.
Really?
Printmaking, and I got most of that training primarily from Barbara Jones, who was one of the members of AFRICO. She's just deceased in the last 2 years now. I of course, work with painting, sculpture, ceramics. I work with all those various media, and of late, I've been working, of late being from 1987 to now.
Of late.
I've been working quite actively in enamel on copper, which is actually fused glass to metal, which is an ancient process that goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, coming on forward, and it's been around forever. It was a very widely used technique within the Renaissance and Baroque and medieval periods in European church art. And I also do stained glass windows and things of that nature. So I work in all kind of media. It depends on what it is I want to do and where the work might be going, because from 1982 to now, I've done quite a large number of public artworks. And
like the one that you have at the Bruce Bowling Center?
Yeah, the one I have at the Bruce Bowling Building.
Is that glass?
That's enamel on copper, which is glass to metal.
Okay.
Glass fused to metal. It's powdered glass ground up with various minerals and other materials that give you the particular colors. And then it's dusted onto a sheet of metal, copper, put into a kiln and fired for about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes at most, at a temperature of roughly 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's about where glass begins to melt. And copper melts at around 2000 or 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the chemistry that happens in that whole physics of that activity, and it's only 1.5 minutes. Beyond that, you start all over again.
Okay.
It's not one of these long processes in terms of the actual technique, but in terms of the thinking and the structure and all that is involved in getting everything in place for that to become fired, is quite a long and extensive process, because the piece at the Bowling Building, which is 28 feet by 9.5 feet, took myself and my 3 apprentices a good little period of time.
It sure did. I know.
These 3 young ladies,
they were amazing.
Hey, Flolinda Jean and Chanel Trevell,
yep,
and Mikhail Bosch. Those 3 young ladies came to me through a program, the CAPC from Mass College of Art, which Equire is in charge of the program called Spark the Art Movement.
Yes.
So I, do quite a bit of work in all those mediums, principally in textiles, enamel, and printmaking. I love printmaking, and I do printmaking all the time. So as a matter of fact, I'm working on a portfolio now, which I'll have available at the Roxbury Open Studios this year.
Okay. I like that. Wow. So that's how you got it. Well, your artistic history is extensive, if I do say so myself. I mean, as long as I've known you, I never knew that you were in. I've only seen your works, but I never realized that you were so proficient in all of those.
Yeah. Well, many artists work in several media.
Okay.
But myself, I'm one of these hands-on kind of artists.
Yes, you are.
I love to be engaged in the physical process of art making. And I don't see the activity of image making as restricted to any particular material. Because if you are of a creative nature, you think in all those different formats. And the more you are acquainted with the many types of techniques to execute a visual image, I think the greater your ability to communicate with a broader base of people. Okay. And it allows you to be able to be a lot more creative than if you were, and this is my own opinion, if you were pretty much dedicated to one particular medium only. And even if an artist works in only one medium, if they are well versed as a visual creative person, they are aware of the other techniques, and those things do play into the context of whatever they produce. But there aren't a large number of artists who work in such a broad number of techniques as those that I've indicated that I do. And I do it because I enjoy it. And so, and many times the certain technique is dictated by where the work is ultimately going to reside, like the Bowling Building Commission and the doors I did for Roxbury Community College. They have to be executed out of material that is reasonably resistant to wear and tear and has longevity of the nature that enamel, I've already indicated, goes back 3,000 years. They've got pieces still here from then. So those will be around long after.
After we're well, yep, you, me.
Yeah, all our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they'll be the benefactors of that.
Yes.
Along with the fact that at the Roxbury Community College, I'm very proud of the fact that my work is there along with one of my elder mentors who is no longer with us, John Wilson, because the sculpture that's on the ground of his father and son was done by John Wilson.
Yes.
And if people take note, as much and however painful or otherwise it might be, to look at the news snippets that come up with Trump speaking with visitors to the Oval Office where he's sitting and having his TV presentations, that on the side in which the guests sit, which is usually on his right, if you are ever able to look over their shoulder, you will see the bust of Dr. Martin Luther King sitting there. And that came in there under the aegis of the Obamas.
Yes.
That's John Wilson's sculpture.
John
and
Wilson
over the other guy's shoulder, who sits in the Oval Office, you'll see Churchill's bust.
Okay.
And those two busts are there, and most people never know that. About that bust of Dr. King. It's done by John Wilson.
I did not know that
as well as the
John.
Eternal Presence piece that's on the ground of the Museum of the National Center of Afro-American Artists. That's John Wilson.
I know.
And another one of my mentors from here, beyond Alan Roy and Gray, is Lois Maylou Jones, who was born in Boston and taught for all of her career at Howard University and had a nice home on Martha's Vineyard, which she turned into a gallery. And her first exhibiting artist there was Chandler, Robin Chandler.
Robin Chandler.
Yes, who had just finished a residency at Bunker Hill as an artist, scholar in residence.
Really?
Yeah. And so, you know, I really, really value having lived here all this time because my relationships and my creative life has been, as I continue to say in our conversations, has been thoroughly enriched by all these people who have been a part of my orb of creative life. You know, and so my children have grown up with a house full of work by all these different artists. I mean, you know.
I know they have.
I've had the occasion to have artists visit with me at my home, which is...
Let's talk just a little bit about your home.
Well, I live in the area, I live in Highland Park,
yes, you
most
do.
notably known as Fort Hill.
Yes.
But I have a house that I bought when I moved here. It's a Greek Revival, well, it's the same architecture as the White House, actually.
Actually,
it's Greek
it is,
Revival,
yes.
right. But it's wood, not stone, and it's 14 rooms. I've been living
It is
there
14 rooms, everyone.
And when I moved in, everything I had I could put it in the hallway, but now I need more space after all these years. But
you do?
I've raised my daughters there. I started in 1979 the Research Institute of African Diaspora Arts, which is a nonprofit. And over the course of all of these years, starting in 1982, Ibn Pori Pitts, a very good artist, poet, and activist out of Detroit, he and I started Juneteenth celebrations. And we did continually for 20 years, from 82 to 2002, at my house every summer. We would, every June 19th or thereabout in that framework, whether it fell on the weekend or during the week, we held a Juneteenth celebration, which it consisted of an exhibition of either his work or some other artist. We had individuals such as, say, Barry Gaither and various others who would come to and do a talk about black art or black culture in some kind of context. People like Askia Torre would come and do his readings, and then we had upwards over the course of that day of a Saturday, we would have easily 300 or 400 people who would come through. People come, they bring a dish of food, they bring their children.
Yes.
It was a whole day's
I
program.
was only at one.
Yeah, but you
And
were
that
a
was
part
a
of that
long
history.
time ago. And
Well, yeah, in
I didn't know
82
you were still doing that.
Well, I haven't done it since 2002 for a number of reasons.
Okay.
One, I was teaching at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. I went south to
Yeah,
teach
you were
for a
teaching
while.
somewhere because I could
And
never
then
find you.
I went back to get another degree. I got an MFA from the Maryland Institute College of Art in 2005, and subsequently, a number of my colleagues who were of the mature age like I am, I thought it was quite unique. So some of them went back and got them a degree. They thought they were a little bit too old, but I went back, got another degree, and had a wonderful time
Amazing.
at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and which I went there primarily to extend my artistic practice through film and video,
Okay.
because they had just opened up this extraordinary film and video facility, and it didn't hurt that I knew the dean of the
No, it
graduate
didn't
school.
hurt, did it?
And she'd been bugging me for over 30-some years to come get another degree, so I finally decided I would do it. And,
that is wonderful.
And so I had, encouraged some of my colleagues to go back and do the same thing. And so all of that is to say that many of the artists of Afro-Cobra, half of us at least, left Chicago and taught at various other colleges and universities around the country. And all of us now are retired, not tired, but I meant to say retired.
Retired.
Emeritus.
Have you retired?
Oh yeah, I retired in 2010 from officially teaching at a college and university, but
okay.
I actually still do teach. I have various young people
was
who
gonna
come
say,
and
you
work under
do.
me as apprentices, and I still am involved with the arts in the same manner I was when I was actively teaching at the university level. And I enjoy what I do now, which is always been what I've done at the university level, because I always maintain a practice in my classrooms. I would have a loom in my classroom that I worked on.
Okay.
Because my Kingdom Mass Art, just as a little a sidebar, is that I asked how many students were in the class. They said they had 20. I asked them how many looms did they have. They said they had 20. I said, well, then you're going to either have to have 19 students or you're going to have to buy another loom.
Because I'm going to have a loom.
I said,
Like
because
what?
I work in my class, and most artists, and this is my opinion, who have the greatest success with their students are who themselves are working in the classroom themselves.
Exactly.
Because art is a practice that you learn through doing.
Doing.
And there's a lot that's theoretical and analytical, and all those other kinds of academic aspects of it are important, but they do not replace the actual physical working and doing.
Yes.
And so, because I remember as an undergraduate, there was a Japanese ceramist who came to the school. He had this big mountain of clay on the wheel, and traditional ceramics tell you very clearly you have to have the clay centered in order to get this symmetrical form. He plopped this big piece of clay on there, and it was, moving about like this, and someone brought up that point, and he said, no. He said, if you are not centered, it doesn't matter whether the clay is centered.
You're not
and he started
centered.
pulling off these little cups off of this, and that's been my foundational focus forever, is that if you're not centered, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter what the
Whether the material is centered or not, because the material goes where you put it.
Okay.
And so if you're centered, you can do what you have to do, which means that you have to be focused and grounded in yourself.
Exactly. I want to say that we are going to be going to a break, but also to my my folks that are watching at home, if you wish to talk to Mr. Napoleon Jones Henderson and ask him a question, please do. He'll be with us, and we'll be back shortly. We're going to a break.
check out this park. Oh, wow, that's really cool. To find a great local park or forest near you, go to discovertheforest.org.
Testing. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be blood. Next Thursday?
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So,
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
I know they do.
So that's.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Artists of Color. And today my host is artist Napoleon Jones Henderson. And we've been having a great conversation, as I'm sure you all noticed. But we're going to talk about Roxbury Open Studios.
Yes.
Roxbury Open Studios is 20 years old. They started in 1999. I remember when they first started. But let's talk about the history.
Well, the history goes back to actually 1998.
Right.
With Candelaria Silva.
Yes.
Who was the director of ACT Roxbury, which is ACT, Art, Culture, and Trade. And the Roxbury Open Studios is an outcome of that, as well as the Roxbury Film Festival, which had a couple of name reiterations, but all of those are from the leadership and the imagination of Candelaria
yes.
and her working with many of the other artists like myself and others who have helped her put that forward, and it has continued for these 20 years now. And it's a yearly showcase, a part of Boston's larger showcase of open studios, Fort Point, South End, Jamaica Plain,
I didn't realize that.
Dorchester, Mattapan, all these places have, you can go to the city's website and they're all listed.
I did.
But this is our 20th, and we are now, this year's Open Studios is named all under one roof. And the one roof is the Milner Cass Athletic Center there on Washington, bordering on Washington Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. Dr. King Boulevard, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right.
Dr. King, Martin Luther King Boulevard and Washington Street. So we're there this year celebrating the 20th, and there will be quite a active day of activity. Spark the Artmobile is going to be there.
Okay.
We've got upwards of about 50 or better artists from all around Roxbury, and on average we usually range between 50 to 75 artists.
Yes.
And that over in the previous years have been dispersed through a few locations around Roxbury proper. Well, some of them were First Rachel Roxbury, Hibernia Hall,
Delaware Thomas
House, and so forth. And so this year, which is for the benefit of the larger public and for the artists, because being dispersed like that, we didn't have enough time to be able to visit each other's locations and so forth. So we really, over these years, haven't had the opportunity to visit and be with each other if we were in separate locations. So since now we're all under one roof,
so
we'll be able to do that.
Oh, yes.
And it makes it easier for the general public to come and visit and buy works from the artists and engage the artists and themselves, bring their family and have the children exposed to what it's like seeing and being professional artists, seeing and being engaged with all the different activities in terms of demonstrations and various other activities that this year will be magnified beyond what they had been in previous years. And so it's the beginning of our next 20 years of creative presentation to the larger, greater Roxbury area of all the artists, because we have quite a large number of younger artists. And I say younger in terms of myself. If you're 50, you're young, okay, in my book. But these are
I have to agree with you, Napoleon. You are so right.
But these are artists
You are so right.
in their 20s, and we are very actively involved with the young artists over at Mass College of Art, and some artists over at the Museum School, and various other, and at Roxbury Community College, the students who there are in the arts. And so we are looking at this year's celebration as a kind of demonstration of how we're going to go forward for the next 20 years in terms of seeing about having everything pretty much under one roof. So we'll be able to have musicians, we'll be able to have poets, and we'll be able to have writers and dancers, and the whole, if you will, spectrum of arts and cultural activity in this one location. But this is principally the stage for the visual arts. Okay. But it embraces all the other arts as well. So the fact that we're able to have a facility where we're all together, that makes it a lot easier. You know, so this is the 20th, and we would encourage everybody in the greater Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Brookline, South End, Fort Channel,
come visit,
and everyone else to come and visit, because actually over these years we have had many visitors come to Roxbury Open Studios from all around the state of Massachusetts and from out of state. And I know that from my my guest book, because I have people sign my guest book, which is something I learned very much from my good mentor, Alan Roy and Creighton. Everyone who knows Alan, you know, if you ever went to his house, you had to sign his book.
Yeah, I know.
And it's really a wonderful history too, because I've, you know, as I indicated, we started, I started the Research Institute of African and African Diaspora Arts back in 1979, and I've got guest books that cover people who've come to visit about that, people who've come to look at the collection of art that I have, because I've always given, and people have gotten married in my house. We've had groups to meet there. All kinds of activities. A group of sisters who left here and went to Kenya. Passage to Kenya is the name of the group. They went to Kenya for the 10th year of the Decade of the Women, which was started by Rosalind Carter when Jimmy Carter and they were in the presidency. And it was held, the 10th one was in Nairobi, Kenya. That group of women met at my house all the time and put their whole activity together. As a matter of fact, they brought back a group of young kids from Thika, Kenya, who some of them stayed at my house and others stayed around the corner from me at the house of Dee Prim, which you surely remember Dee Prim, who was a very important and active woman in the community.
Yes.
And we took them on a trip by train from here to Chicago when Harold Washington was mayor, and they were in the Bud Billiken Parade, which is a decades, is at least more than 50 years old parade that occur in Chicago every year. The mythology started by the Defender newspaper at the beginning of the academic year when all children go back to school. So it's the myth of the Billiken. Bud Billiken was the one that we were always looking for. It was a big parade similar to what we just started again from last year, a Roxbury
For
parade.
the Roxbury, okay.
And so we had floats and all kinds of activity taking place, and it ended up in what we call Malcolm X Park, which was previously known as Washington Park in Chicago, but same with the park here. So the Roxbury Open Studios has many manifestations, and so those guest books and people coming from all around the country and around the world have visited various artists doing Roxbury Open Studios. So if we put together a geography of where we've had people come to Roxbury Open Studios over the course of these 20 years, we would be international without any question, because people had come from all over the world to visit with the artists.
Oh, she found it.
Yes. So, you know, we
need to, you know, and since you started talking about, you know, putting together a history, we need to go back.
Okay.
To 1999 and 1980. I remember in 1997 when Candelaria did a 2-day workshop at RCC.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I remember that is because she's the one that got me started on doing my art and cultural publication, Humanistic Guide.
Which I have almost all the copies.
Do you really?
Yes.
I gotta come see you, because there are copies I can't find anymore, because I've, you know, transitioned so much. But she's the one, she sat and we talked for a long time. And I told her what I wanted to do, and she said, so do it.
Right. That was her mantra, and still is her mantra.
Mantra,
you know,
today.
And it's about, and that's exactly what it is. It's not about what you want to do, it's what you do.
Yeah.
So get on up and take care of it. Nobody can keep you from doing it but yourself.
That's true.
You're your only competition.
You're right.
And when I say you, I'm talking about the universal you.
Yes.
Granted, it doesn't dismiss the fact that there are obstacles and resistance and pushback and all kinds of other stuff, but that's a
That's
given.
going to happen.
But you still, you can do it.
It's online now.
Okay.
We're still out there.
I know you're still out there. Well, we're sitting in the living aspect of it right now.
Yes,
this
we
show.
are.
So this is a continuation.
And this show is 13 years old this month.
See,
So
in the
I'm quite
aspect
glad
of
I'm
that,
still doing it.
oh, absolutely. And the thing about the Open Studios is that it has always been a catalyst for continued activities throughout the year. It's not just, it's a one-year event, a yearly event, but the artists who participate in it are actively engaged in producing their work throughout the year.
Yes.
And so right now, we have transitioned into, we being the organizational component of Roxbury Open Studios, to Roxbury Open Studios Collaborative. We are an entity, that is our official name. We have a structure. Open Studios Collaborative. And see, collaborative is important because we are as successful as we are as individuals to the extent of our collaboration with others and between ourselves. And so that collaborative aspect is an important element. That's something we've, at least I know I've always grown up in my family, is that everybody works with everyone else. And that's the mantra of Chicago. I say if anybody grew up in Black Chicago and want to say that they are not an activist, they either had to choose not to be because you were raised as an activist. And an activist is a collaborative process of engaging and working with others beyond your limited space for a greater goal. A greater activity. And
that's how I met you.
Yeah.
My mom and, was it Myra McAdoo, Mel King, were running up and down the streets of the South End trying to get black folks not to sell their property.
Yep.
And they were out there in rain, sleet, and snow.
And that's the same thing we do with our art, because to some extent, Roxbury Open Studios has had the pleasure, the benefit, and the deficit of occurring usually in the first week in October every year.
Yes.
And the weather has switched, and we did switch it around this year, the 24th, for a number of different reasons. But
please tell me why.
The why has more to do with the availability of the center this year for us to be able to put all the artists under one roof. So that is the principal reason. And moreover, it allows us the capacity to do a lot more focused kinds of activities related to artists in Roxbury that being dispersed over these several little satellite locations, as we have been for the past 19 years, did not easily allow to happen. So this time, that is the principal reason for that. And, we have to determine whether we'll stay in November or, come back to October, the first week in October. But the week in which we have Open Studios is virtually unimportant from my perspective. What's important is that we do it. And so it shall continue.
I agree with you.
But it will likely, without any question, continue for another 20 years. We are asking, I'm putting it out there for younger artists to come and become an active participant with the elder artists like myself and others between this space of their age and my age, to make this a legacy institution that occurs ongoing down the road. Because it has occurred for these 20 years due to the initiation and sparking of it coming into being, I would say the birthing of it by Candelaria and her associates at that time, and by the active participation of artists like myself and Darlene Smart, and other artists have continually worked from one year to the next to make this a possibility.
Oh, I know.
And so it's now, we're very much looking for younger artists to come on board, and we need to have younger artists come and apprentice with us in order to understand the logistical aspect of keeping this legacy going
alive.
Forward.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So what else
I'd like to be a part of that.
Well,
I am, Because I'm here, you're here.
Well, see, you're doing your part.
And
see,
I'm doing-
and you are an artist. You are a creative person in the context. This is a creative enterprise
Venue.
here.
Yep.
And so what you do with cameras and microphones and scheduling and making it available to the larger public is the same thing we do as visual artists. And so each medium is a creative medium. And what you do with any, whether you make clothes, whether you cook, whether you do hair, whether you
It's an
raise
artistic
children.
medium.
I mean, if you, daycare center, that's an artistic enterprise.
In
Because
itself.
keeping young kids, young minds, cultivating them and having them to grow and understand and deal with and learn these various skills of critical thinking, sharing, and cooperation with each other. You know, the whole 7 principles of the Nguza Saba. Hey, look,
yes.
that's the foundational base. That's an artistic exercise.
That's true.
Everything is creative, you know.
Yes.
And some people, you know, have tendencies to use their creativity in not so creative and
Ways.
contributive, productive manners, but nonetheless, those are skills and attributes that we all have, and we just simply need to sharpen and make them manifest for the benefit of the larger community and for humanity as a whole. Because through the creative journey, humanity is elevated. And so it's whenever the creative process is not encouraged, nourished, and pushed forward, you find stagnation in the humanity of people.
Never thought about it that way. That's true. Never thought about it that way.
And
That's a piece of wisdom.
well, it's something that was passed on to me by
Yes.
my elders, and my
Oh, there
responsibility,
you
as they
go.
told me, is to pass it on.
Pass it on to the
You
next
know.
generation.
And so we're looking for, and we still have registration for artists who wish to participate in Open Studios this year.
Really?
Yes, they can go to the website that's been posted
Okay,
on
yes.
the screen and get in touch and register and come on down and be a part of this 20th celebration of the cultural richness of Roxbury.
Very. Yes. Okay. I am like, wow. So now I understand the artists under one roof, because I was saying, what is that?
Yeah, and,
You know,
and under
okay,
one roof,
what-
and you know,
And
what-
I can understand
Right.
it though now.
see, that in a way you can metaphorically say it's the village central place. It's the village
Okay.
hut.
Okay.
everyone to
just
convene,
Yes.
And so when you think about it in that context, the village of Roxbury,
Yeah.
we're all coming together to
Together.
this central location. And
To
Milner
convene.
Cass, we all a pillar of this community.
Absolutely.
So to be under the
That
roof of a
roof.
place that carries the name of Milner Cass, and we're just roughly a block or two from the home where Malcolm grew up with his aunt, and we're in the park, which we call Malcolm X Park.
Park.
I mean, you know, what better place to be?
No, but
You know.
please.
And we're speaking, that's a creative church going on November the 2nd and 3rd.
Now,
at
I
the-
like that, a
There you are.
creative church going on.
That's
Well, I will
right.
be there for creative church, that's for sure.
All right then.
I will
We will,
definitely-
and I will say we'll all be there preaching.
I know, won't y'all? Artistically preaching.
Artistically preaching, 'cause that's what it is. It's a performance. And the arts will be there, and we'll have all manner of creative product.
Can you give us an idea about who some of the artists might be?
Well,
I
some
know
of-
we talked about Darlene
we
Smart.
got Darlene Smart. We got, and see, and I'm going to miss somebody's name, and I don't want anybody
we
to
don't
be
wanna miss-
mad with
just-
me about that.
But just a
But we got
couple.
Wendy Ellerton, who's
Oh,
on my way,
Wendy.
and we've got Lisa Lee will be a
Yep,
part
Lisa's
of it.
gonna be there. See what
Equa
I'm
is
saying?
going to be a part of it, and myself, and
Are your mentees?
yeah, my mentees,
Is it
they're
they gonna
going to be a part.
there?
Yeah, Chanel and Flolinda, they're going to be participating, and at least if they physically aren't there, their work will be represented, because I'm going to have a space that will have all of their works.
Oh,
and
I want to see
mine.
their works, because I haven't seen any of Chanel's work
Oh,
at
yeah.
all.
Well, Chanel right now, I think the show is it's going to close either the end of this month. She was one of the chosen artists for the Cordova Museum's Biennale. So she's in the Biennale at the Cordova Museum, which there was a piece done on the another TV program about her presence there.
I saw something.
Right.
I saw her
And,
on Facebook because her and I are Facebook friends.
She's
So
very
I
active on that, and
Yes.
she has done quite a number of other public art projects throughout the city, and which I find quite interesting. She's in the Biennale at the Cordova, and I'm in the Biennale in Venice. So what can we say? It's a
Y'all
good
just
pairing.
getting it.
We
you
just
know,
getting it on.
internationally, just going
And
on it.
she's an extraordinarily gifted young lady.
She sure
and,
is. Oh, she is.
As a matter of fact, she and I are finalists for the Roxbury Dudley Branch Library Public Art Commission.
Are you
so
serious? I'm surprised.
We were one of the 3 finalists.
Okay, wonderful.
And so that was the process that's put out for public art in general. As a matter of fact, that's a project that will probably, not the library, but public art in Roxbury,
yes.
under the aegis of the Roxbury Cultural District, of which I
Okay.
am the president of the
President
Roxbury
of,
Cultural
sir.
District. And this is actually our 2nd year as an official 501c3 cultural district in the city of Roxbury. Throughout the state, the Mass Cultural Council has established
There aren't that many.
cultural districts all across. Yeah, there are quite a number across the state.
Really?
Yeah, and we received our designation in 2016,
Yes, you
and
did.
in 2017 we got our 501c3, and so as one of the number of activities is the full support of the 20th anniversary of the Roxbury Open Studios, and we have a whole itinerary of activity that we're going to be announcing in due course for the
Leading
rest
up
of leading up to
to
next
the-
spring and next year.
Oh.
So these are a number of initiatives which I don't want to put those on the
No, we don't do that
on the air just yet. We haven't fully concretized them where we want them to be, but we do want people to know that the Roxbury Cultural District, as well as Roxbury Open Studios, and all other manner of creative activity in the greater Roxbury area is collaborating together.
Oh, that's amazing. That is so amazing. I am so happy. I'm excited.
We all are, and
I mean,
and
I've been
things,
thinking about the cultural and artistic, the district and what was going to be going on, and culture, the artistic culture all over Roxbury.
yeah. Well, see, Roxbury is a very unique city.
Yes.
And Mattapan's a city, Dorchester's a city. I say it's a city because they were all incorporated into the metropolitan Boston area. But we have our identity, and Roxbury is very unique.
Yes, it is. And Mr. Napoleon Jones Henderson, thank you for being with me this afternoon
Well,
to
thank you,
talk
Susan.
with us about Roxbury Open Studios and to talk about you. I am Elaine Hall-Corbin, your host, and thank you for joining us today at Artists of Color. See you again in October.